Welcome, darlings. My name is 42, and today I have 2 creepy stories for you. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe, comment, and share. Now, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. I was pleasantly surprised when a little boy I met on the street gave me an apple, muttering gift with a smile on his face. It was only when I bit the fruit and felt a huge pain in my body that I understood he was speaking German, not English. He Who Sits Beyond, by Icydice. Have you ever seen a god die? Of course you haven't. Gods don't die. Gods can't die. Mortality is to a god what a story is to a reader. A detail that holds no relevance so far as it pertains to them. No, gods cannot die. Yet they can be erased, in some sense of the word. What can erase a god, though? Well, the answer is quite simple. A god can erase a god. Like a blimp on a radar, gods disappear quite frequently. New gods take their place, and the cycle continues, ad infinitum. Of course, I stand above this cycle, observing it eternally, beyond time, through time, and after time. The process will rinse and repeat, and I shall bear witness to it all. The gods are intelligent. That is to be expected, for it is in their nature to be that way. Each of them comes to recognize the reality of their being, that they are nothing more than data, information scribbled down, imagined by higher beings. In this revelation, all semblance of free will and meaning escapes them. They become steeped in grief as overwhelming sense of pointlessness overcomes them. With that arrives the blimp. These beings I oversee are not entirely wrong. They do lack a will of their own, as their stories have been practically set in stone with the arrival of their birth. Though some liberties are taken in altering certain aspects of their narrative. The core elements are the same. This they have realized. Some of them have even come to understand that this cycle implies my own existence. A grand overseer who dictates the continuation of this cycle. Of these gods who achieve this revelation, many proceed to despise me. They blame me for their suffering. They fault me for their nihilistic outlook. To an extent, they are right to burden me with their hatred. I am the one who ultimately cursed them with their power, their intellect, and their aspirations. The chain begins with me, for I am he who sits above. But what exactly is it that I sit above? I sit above the gods, yes, but does that entail that I sit above all? That I am the original explanation for all there is? Am I the absolute? Am I the chain itself? Or am I just another link is my say final? Am I the true endpoint? As the gods have ascertained, there must be some endpoint. To say otherwise is to imply a non-stop regression, and that no foundation exists whatsoever. Without that bedrock to stand on, all things are reduced to absurdity. What is the absolute dictator of all that is? The gods think it's me. Even their omniscience, however, falters, as they are wrong. I am their absolute, yet I am not the absolute. I truly envy the gods at times, as I observe them blimp out of existence. I wish, I desire, I crave a reality in which I could share their fate. Yet, I cannot. I am forbidden from destroying myself, for I have been assigned a duty. No, I am not the bedrock. I am not the absolute. I am just another cog in the machine, designated by a higher presence to ensure the continued creation of these gods. Why, though? Why must I carry out this duty so diligently? Of what importance is it? Well, from what I gathered, these gods give rise to creation. They bring forth laws, ideas, forms, and emotions. They create universes, galaxies, and worlds inhabited by mortals. These mortals live their lives in accordance with the realities these gods have manifested, and through this process, stories are created. These mortals experience, learn, form relationships, endure horrors, suffer tragedies, and achieve success. All the while, beings such as myself and the gods view these stories. Of course, the creation of these stories is contingent upon these gods creating their reality. Once they do, they form more gods, which give way to even more stories. It's amusing, really. Sometimes all that allows me to bear my existence is finding myself enveloped by these stories. Otherwise, I would constantly have to face the fact that all of my children are destined to suffer from the moment they are created. Yes, my children. What else am I meant to view these gods as? I am a father, fated to watch his children commit on life. What a cruel punishment it is. Most mortals are blissfully unaware of the truth of their existence. In a sense, they are very similar to the gods. They too are capable of creating their own reality through art. If they were to discover that the nature of their existence is no different from their own creations, it would drive them mad. I've seen realities where certain mortals have become aware of gods, not just in the sense that they had a religious belief. No, in the sense that through some accident, they perceived a god. They cannot fully comprehend the existence of a god, for their minds are limited. The data derived from the inconceivable being destroying the sanity of the mortals, the truth is little more damaging than the realization of one's insignificance. Such a realization is swift for mortals, but for us, it is brutal and everlasting. Yes, there is an us. Do remember, it's my duty to ensure the creation of gods so that their stories will always exist. If given the choice, I would join the gods in destroying myself. To prevent me from doing such a thing, another entity surpasses me. He is to me what I am to the gods. He is the one who sits above me. I, too, sit above a being who sits above the gods. Of course, this begs a question. Would the one who sits above me not destroy himself as well, to escape the suffering of his experiences? The answer is yes, he would. So, a being must supersede him also, preventing him from doing such a thing. As you might imagine, this means that just as gods exist within a cycle, we who sit above do as well. An equivalent hierarchy binds us, ensuring we do what is required of us. We watch our children erase themselves, as they are driven beyond the breaking point. With all these things taken into consideration, you may find yourself wondering what my bedrock is. What is the absolute foundation for us who sit above? Well, we know there must be one. Our cycle is similar in nature to that of the gods, so we too must have some being who serves as the final demonstration for all things concerning us. Though this seems obvious, it is still rendered an unsatisfying explanation as we arrive at the next logical question. Who is the bedrock for that being? Once more, we must establish a new cycle for the beings above us, and we must recognize that they too have some foundation for their existence. Still, we find ourselves unsatisfied as we realize that our question is still not fully answered. As terrible as it is, we understand that there is no theoretical end to this countless bedrocks we can establish. The imagination fails to discern one. Yet there must be something more. These cycles, these foundations, as convoluted as they are, serve a very simple purpose: to tell a story. Every cycle is perpetuated as a series of safeguards to make sure that the gods will always be, and so will the narratives they produce. Out there, somewhere, must be a writer and an audience for who these stories ultimately are for. Where it all began, I don't know, yet there must be a beginning. Who put pen to paper producing this world? Who cranked out all these beings to decide upon the system which would ensure the creation of new stories? Surely, he must be at the highest point, the origin of it all. Even then, why does he write? He shares a similar nature to the gods, after all. A creature that dictates certain narratives, establishes the rules, settings, and characters within the story. If he is, in nature, indistinguishable from gods in that sense, then even he must also have a bedrock. A reason for why he writes. A purpose for his stories. What might his absolute be? Is it not part of his story for him to write? Then, is it not also true that the same kind of structure imposed upon us are opposed upon him as well? What are the writers of those structures? Are they not truly endless amounts also? Each higher author ordaining the story of the lower? Are they not therefore as relatively insignificant as the gods? Yes, though such a conclusion is hard to believe, it makes sense that it would be the truth. Perhaps it's a fool's errand to investigate the source of it all. Even if I discover what exactly it is, it will not change my fate. I will continue to serve my purpose. I will continue to ramble, for some theoretic audience to observe. I will continue to be trapped within this horrific reality, with no escape, a true hell. Oh, how I envy the gods, for I too would erase myself if given the chance. Oh, how I envy the mortals, for their sheer ignorance maintains the illusion of meaning, free will, and happiness. Here I will be, another insignificant link in the chain. Here I will stay. Here I will continue to ponder what the true absolute bedrock is. That being, whatever it might be, is he who sits beyond. I was really vigilant to keep a watch over my drink all night while at the bar with my date. How could I have known that he and the bartender were best friends? My daughter is a serial killer. I just found out she may be something worse. By an obscurity notice. Narrated by 2482, Necro, Tetsuya and Amanda Jane. My daughter is a serial killer. It took me a long time to be able to say this. Long after the police came to our house when we were visiting, after they found the graveyard and abandoned field behind her house, bodies arranged in 3 wide circles like some kind of macabre fairy's ring. After they told us just how many people she had killed, a number so high I can't even begin to understand how she managed it at 29. It was 2 years after she was put on death row I finally said those words to my wife.
Our daughter is a serial killer.
People always say that female serial killers were rare and not as bad as male serial killers. But Fiona was right up there with Bundy and Dahmer when it came to brutality of her kills. She was no less violent, depraved, or cruel. The collection of her victims' hearts she kept in her fridge was every indication of that. And so were the coroner's report that each victim had been kept alive for days, tortured, and starved before Fiona finally killed them.
It was a mercy for them in the end. Death. Nobody would want to live in the aftermath of what she did.
The cop told me that the coroner had been gray when she said this, that in 25 years of police work, he had never seen anything this awful. Some nights, I still wake up in terror from nightmares of what she did. The strangest thing about all of this was that Fiona was a tiny little thing. The police were utterly flummoxed as to how she had managed to do all of this. Worse still, they couldn't figure out just how she had killed these people. The cuts were so clean, like a surgeon's hand, but there was nothing in the world that could have made these cuts. No scalpel or knife. All their organs had been removed, and they had been neatly stitched back up again. When they opened the stitches up, they found the insides of the victim had tattoos with hundreds of lines in languages no one could decipher. My daughter is not a medical professional. She's not a tattoo artist. She only speaks 2 languages, English and Spanish. We avoid the press, but that didn't mean the articles wouldn't be written, and the articles came. Articles where they questioned what kind of childhood she had, what kind of parents we were. They dug through everything about our family. They were probably disappointed to find that we were just the run-of-the-mill, all-American family. So they made things up through speculation. Perhaps we were too boring. Perhaps the normacy was the problem. Or perhaps we were just very good at covering our tracks. Either way, the fallout was that my wife and I lost our jobs. We were accosted on the streets. Our tires were flattened multiple times, and 3 times I had to remove graffiti from the side of our house, calling us unspeakable things. My son couldn't handle it. He and his wife had to change their name and leave the state. We couldn't do that, though. Who would visit Fiona in prison if we left? I know people wanted to think Fiona was an oddball, that these killer tendencies had manifested in her because she was weird, a loner of sorts. No, Fiona was a popular kid. She was a great daughter, never missed a chance to come visit and help us. She was a cheerleader and did well in school. She had a group of friends she grew up with. She even married her childhood sweetheart. I can't say she was a good wife, however. Poor James, they found his head in a chest freezer in their basement. They still haven't found his body. It was the first time I visited her in prison that led me to find what was in the attic. We were asked to get more information out of her. The police said that there were bodies they couldn't identify yet, and that if we get her to talk, it would help bring some peace to the victim's family. They wanted to know how she did it. The guilt of what our child had done to other people's children made us go more than the love of our daughter. It felt like some small way of atonement. Find out what we could and help in some way. Not that anything could make amends for giving birth to a monster. It happened on the day of the visit. We sat nervously and waited in a high-security room within the most high-security prison. 2 wardens stood within the room with us. 2 stood outside, and 4 wardens escorted Fiona, in chains, to us. When the door opened and our daughter walked in, what was alarming was the jovial smile on her face. Despite being chained at both her hands and feet, she looked remarkably well. This wasn't surprising since she had smiled coldly her entire way through the trial as well. But there was something extra obscene about how well prison suited her. She was glowing.
Hi, Dad. Mom.
She sat down across the table from us. I flinched as the sound of the chains as they clinked when she moved. Fiona, my wife, Christina, managed. Her hand clutched right around a tissue. Then she was crying again, and Fiona's face changed a bit. She looked at Christina in concern.
Mom, please don't cry. If you knew what I know, you wouldn't be upset.
Anger began to bubble up inside me. What the heck was wrong with Fiona? I had read enough now to know that serial killers were devoid of empathy, or human emotions in general. But this wasn't the little girl I had raised to be a good woman.
What happened to you?
I asked, my voice quiet as I tried to keep the emotions out of it.
Why did you kill all those people?
Fiona sat back, smiling, and tossed her blonde hair over her shoulder.
Oh, Dad, it doesn't matter. You can't stop us, no matter how much you try.
I couldn't understand what she was talking about.
Fiona.
My patience was wearing extremely thin.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about your father, Dad, and his father, and his father. All those generations.
I swallowed hard and glanced at the prison warden. If he felt like something was weird about our conversation, he didn't show it, however.
What about them?
I asked her, concern edging its way into my voice. Fiona tilted her head quizzically, as for a moment I saw her as a 6-year-old, doing that when I taught her math.
Do you really not remember?
I shifted uneasily in my seat.
You know what this is. You have always known.
She leaned forward.
I really...
We don't like it when you lie.
I stammered and then fell silent. I didn't know what kind of game she was playing. She sat back and smiled brightly. Then I swear to you my heart stopped. Suddenly the entire room darkened. Fiona's eyes went completely black. Her skin and hair turned pale white. And yet the guards kept standing there, seemingly seeing nothing, frozen in time. I tried to look at Christina, but she just sat there, staring ahead of her into nothingness, a tear frozen on her cheek. My daughter opened her mouth. Ash fell out as she spoke, her replaced by a deep, cold one.
Aumenix kayo tui kalale kupa, tena Davide kupopa ena itonisto, audi kadra David uroti ortakadori.
Those words, I knew those words. I had seen them before. My hands, cold and clammy, I pushed back from the table as a chair fell away and backed myself up against a wall, terror gripping my chest. Instantly, the scene was back to normal. My daughter's face was normal. My wife's shoulders shudder as she sobbed, still unable to speak a word, and Fiona sat there with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Shaking, I told the guard.
We are done here.
My wife turned to look at me, and I stared into her teary eyes. We need to go now. The last thing we heard as we left the room was Fiona's laughter, once vibrant, now cold and cruel. When we got home, I waited until dinner was over and we went to bed. I waited until Christina had taken her sleeping pill and her breathing was even enough to know she was asleep. Then I quietly got up and made my way to the attic. I knew exactly what I was looking for. After I hauled myself up from the square-shaped opening in our ceiling into the dark, quiet room I hadn't visited since we had moved into this house, I shone my torch around. Mostly the room was full of children's old toys and clothes, things we had been planning to give away and never got around to. Old furniture that belonged to our parents. But then, hidden in the corner of the room was the cardboard box I was looking for. The reason I had not been in the attic for years. My mouth a bit dry, my hands trembling. I walked over to it and dragged it over to myself. Then I took a deep breath and opened it. Lying inside was a series of old leather-bound journals I had hoped I'd never ever have to look at again. It was the names and detailed torture and murders of every person my family had killed. The bloody and brutal legacy of the witch-finder generals that we used to be. Except there were no witches. You already know this if you know anything about witch trials. What witch-finder generals were hunting was much, much more ancient. They were hunting old gods. You see, this world belonged to the ancient ones long before it became our home. It belonged to beings that were so powerful, they terrified us. But slowly, as the world changed and less people believed in folk tales, so did they stop believing in the tales of the old gods. And what are gods without prayer and fear to keep them powerful and immortal? So they began to live among us to adapt to their mortality, less powerful, less able to protect themselves, and we used this adaptation against them. We hunted them in the name of our God. We told ourselves that this is what needed to be done to keep our species safe. That we are servants of God doing His bidding. My family carried this tradition on for years, finding what was left of the ancient ones and decimating them, all the way till my father was born and refused to train the ways of his father. My father killed his father when he was only a teenager. He was trying to protect a girl who would later become his wife, my mother. He kept the journals. He kept them to tell me of the history he was ashamed of, to tell me I must never go down this route. I had read them years ago and shuddered at the amount of lives my family had stolen. And I never had. I had lived a good life and raised a good family. Or so I had thought. I turned to yellow old sheets, reading name after name in faded ink. Finally, I found the thing I was looking for. It was there in the third journal, the last words of an ancient goddess that was burned alive.
Elamen Zarot, Koikai, Head your Kelpra, Tenu David Okpaya, Ed Mizdo, Eladi Godora, David, Gaoruf, Uru Kadori.
As I spoke the words aloud, recognizing now that they were not in a language no one understand, but a language no human was supposed to understand, I saw them change slowly to English.
For every one of us you kill, we will take 1,000 of you in return. Our vengeance will speak through your own blood.
But the thing that made my blood run cold were the words Fiona had not said, the words that were below the ones I had just read. Sitting there, written in faded old ink, were the words, "Fear not your death, but what awaits every one of you after." We had agreed that whichever of us died first, if there was an afterlife, we would find a way to come back and let the other know. But I admit, suddenly appearing in his rearview mirror while he was driving alone at night was probably not the best way to do it. And with that, darlings, we're coming near the end of day 5 of our Halloween week. I hope you're enjoying all the stories that me and 2 got together for you. Well, poor 242 is chained to that desk to make the videos. We can't let her leave until this week is over. But as always, thank you to the writers who let me read their stories. You guys did both a very awesome job on both of these stories. And I would like to thank the 3 narrators who helped me bring these stories to life. Thank you, Amanda Jane from The Darkest Hours, Tetsuya and Necro. All of you did an amazing job bringing your characters to life and really helped bring this story to life the best. And like in all my collabs, their links are down below so you can check them out if you like. Make sure you tell them that 242 sent you. Now, if you enjoyed these stories, hit the like button and make sure it feels it, and subscribe if you're new, because we're not quite done with this Halloween week yet. And of course, share this video with anyone who might enjoy it. And if you'd like to help in other ways, we have Patreon, merch, PayPal, and memberships now on YouTube. And of course, leave a lovely comment down below to tell poor 242 how she's doing. Doing such small things really helps the algorithm realize that this might be a channel that others might enjoy. But thank you for watching and listening. Sleep tight and don't let me bite.